My dear teacher trainees, you are welcome back to my class. And today I shall be presenting before you the last lesson of the unit context of education of the paper Introduction to Education Studies. And the title of the lesson is Psychological Context of Education. And here we'll be discussing how psychological attributes one possesses facilitate his or her own learning in terms of motivation, aspiration, and attitudes. So, in this regard, may I draw your attention? So, every man in the society has some needs, desire, aims, and objectives, or what to say, goals, and there is again strengths and weaknesses. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. What if that was on purpose? And what if that is all a part of the big master plan? That is visions. So we have been gifted with an intellect that opens our minds to ideas and the possibilities. And the product of this is an inner vision for more tomorrow than we have today. And we all have a vision. So if we can hold it in our hearts, we can keep it in our hands. So what is the quickest route to achievement? And the only means is using our strengths. So identifying where you need help, asking for it. Let me begin with motivation. So, what is motivation here? So, motivation is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behaviors. Motivation has as many phases as there are human desires. The simplest definition of motivation boils down to wanting, is defined by Baumeister in 2016. We want a change in behavior, thoughts, feelings, self-concept, environment, and relationship. According to Miller, 1962, motivation is the study of all those pushes and approach, biological, social, and psychological, that defeat our laziness and move us either eagerly or reluctantly to action. Motivation is a process which begins with a psychological process or psychological need or deficiency which triggers behavior or a drive that is aimed at goal or an incentive. Uh, there are three different sources of motivation. This includes the past, the present, and the future. Uh, the past source consists of drives, needs, learning, or other responses programmed in the individual. And the present sources of motivation include enjoyment of performance in the present, intrinsic motivation, emergent motivation, and the future source include goals in directing action, instrumental and integrative. Uh, I should say intrinsic motivation centrally involved in spontaneous exploration and curiosity is a crucial concept in developmental psychology, right? So it has been argued to be a crucial mechanism for open-ended cognitive development in humans, and as such has gathered a growing interest from developmental robotics in recent years. Intrinsic motivation refers to behavior that is driven by internal rewards. In other words, the motivation to engage in a behavior arises from within the individual because it is naturally satisfying to you. So this contrasts with the extrinsic motivation which involves engaging in a behavior in order to earn external rewards or avoid punishment. So in psychology, intrinsic motivation distinguishes between internal and external rewards. Intrinsic motivation occurs when we act without any obvious external rewards. We simply enjoy an activity or see it as an opportunity to explore, learn, and actualize our potentials. So according to Ryan and Desi 2000, intrinsic motivation is defined as the doing of an activity for its inherent satisfaction rather than for some separable consequences. So when intrinsically motivated, a person is moved to act for the fun or challenge entailed rather than because of external products, pressures, or rewards. So motivation is, after all, the ache of doing something without any obvious external rewards, the inherent desire to engage one's interests and to exercise and develop one's capacities. Well, students with intrinsic motivation enjoy activities more, want to learn the subject materials, not just to get a good grade, gain a deeper understanding of the subject matter, are more willing to take on difficult challenges, obtain a higher level of satisfaction during the talks, are guided by areas where they are intrinsically motivated when selecting a career, have less anxiety and depression, have a more positive self-identity, and are more curious. So here in this table chart, I'm organizing the benefits of intrinsic motivation into for different categories under persistence, creativity, conceptual understanding or high quality learning, and optimal functioning and well-being. So in terms of persistence, the higher a person's intrinsic motivation, the greater the person's persistence on that task. Regarding creativity, I mean, in terms of creativity, the more people experience interest, enjoyment, satisfaction, and the challenge of the work itself, the more creative they are. In terms of conceptual understanding, there is flexible thinking, active information processing, learning in conceptual way. And lastly, in terms of optimal functioning and the well-being, greater self-actualization, greater subjective vitality, less anxiety and depression, a greater self-esteem. So these are the benefits of intrinsic motivation. So there is another type of motivation is opposite to intrinsic one, that is nothing but extrinsic. So extrinsic motivation in terms of definition is the type of motivation coming from outside of an individual. It is an action taken by another person. It usually involves an incentive for anticipation of a reward. Good examples include money, reward, praise, grades, performance feedback, etc. And the uses of extrinsic motivation include grade for encouraging basic skill development, reinforcing good habits, and encouraging self-efficacy. Limitations in terms of limitations, extrinsic motivation doesn't create learning on an intrinsic level. It can hurt self-efficacy if misused. Kids can grow dependent when not coupled with a higher concept such as flow. The trend is, I'm telling you, there are three distinct indicators of a higher level of motivation. First, a person who is motivated enjoys the thing that he or she does. Second, he or she is excited to do such tasks. Example is a good student who is excited about learning. Third, he or she is convinced that accomplishing the things he or she is asked to do helps him or her realize the goals he or she has set for him or herself. This Sabula chart made a systematic distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. So let me spell out. Intrinsic motivation comes from within a person, feel a sense of responsibility, feel a need to achieve something for his own sake, connect the activity with your self-esteem, enjoy working on the assignment, tries to achieve growth as an individual. Imagine being in a car, you are driver in your car, completely in control. And on the opposite to it, extrinsic motivation comes from outside forces, tries to achieve a higher position for pay or status, feel it will ensure their position or status, done for recognition from supervisors or superiors, values rewards or award for completing the work. Outside forces control life. It is luck. Imagine being in the car, you are the passenger in the car, not the driver. Now let me proceed to aspirations. So what are aspirations in psychology? Well, aspirations or ambitions are an individual hopes for achieving their goals and ideals in life. It is a desire for personal achievement. It provides the motivation and determination necessary to achieve a particular aim or condition. So ambitions can also be defined as the object or subject of this endeavor. So we can classify aspirations into three types. First is positive and negative aspirations. So positive aspiration is something oriented towards achieving success, while negative aspiration always go for goal of avoiding success. And the second type is immediate and remote aspirations. Third type is known as realistic and unrealistic aspirations. The following are the causes of unrealistic aspirations: uncontrolled imagination, mass media, traditional belief, ignorance due to inexperience. Uh, there are four kinds of aspirations. This include career aspiration, social aspiration, economical aspiration, personal aspiration, and educational aspiration. You see, an individual's aspirational level represents him not only as he or she is at any particular moment, but also as he or she would like to be at some problems in the future. So there are quite a large number of factors affecting aspirations. So I will pick up the most important ones. The first one is intelligence. You see, bright people have more realistic aspirations at all ages than those of average or below average intelligence. Second, gender. Male generally feel a greater need for achievement in athletics, vocational advancements than females. Uh, in terms of interest, uh, what a people is interested in will influence much of what he does. Value is another important factor affecting aspiration. They influence the intensity of a person's interest and give an emotional tone to his aspirations. Then there is family pressures, group expectations, cultural traditions, then competition with others, past experiences, mass media, socioeconomic status, academic achievements, as well as personal characteristics, which include foresight, precision, tolerance, self-esteem, ambition, and temperament greatly influence aspirations. Dear friends, uh, let me tell you something about the level of aspirations. For goal discrepancy type measurement, level of aspiration is customarily defined as the difference between a person's performance in a task and his estimate of future performance in that task. The level at which a person sets his significant goals, the level of performance to which he aspires. An individual's aspirational level has an important bearing on his personality and adjustment. So it is a basic component of his self-image, the way he appears in his own eyes. So generally speaking, most normal individuals have been found to set their significant goals just a little higher than they are sure of attaining. So there may be an element of self-flattery in this tendency, but it is considered healthy since it is a sign of self-acceptance and self-confidence. Relatively high goals also act as a motivating force since they give us something to reach for. Nevertheless, the level must remain with reasonable limits, as Coleman has pointed out. Well-adjusted people tend to have a reasonably accurate evaluation of themselves in relation to their world and hence a fairly realistic level of aspirations. Friends, maladjusted people, on the other hand, tend to be unrealistic to set their aspirations either too high or too low, leading to inevitable failure or to wasted opportunities, and in either case, to unhappiness, according to Coleman, 1964. So, level of aspiration is a universal failure of personality, but it appears to be particularly relevant in a society like our own, in which the pressure to achieve is so great and the feelings of success and failure so crucial. Too often, parents set goals for their children on the basis of their own ambitions, with little regard to the young person's own capabilities or a realistic appraisal of himself. So they also tend to be over influenced by comparisons with other people's children or interpret too rigidly the growth gradients they find in textbooks. So some parents develop feelings of rejection towards their children when they are not measuring up even during infancy or early childhood, and in some environments, it is not unusual for a father or mother to warn a third grader that he won't get into a good college unless he studies harder. If the child continues to fall even slightly behind, such parents apply still greater pressure and run the risk of inflicting severe psychological damage on him. So many children cannot do well under constant pressure, and some develop an intense feeling of failure which leads them to set unrealistically low goals for themselves throughout life. So experiments have thrown a good deal of additional light on aspirational level. According to Levin 1944, uh, uh, a history of repeated success leads to an increased level of aspiration. The more we accomplish, the higher our goals, and the experiences of failure, on the other hand, have more complex effects. Infrequent failures tend either to lower the aspiration level or to cause it to rise less rapidly than under conditions of repeated success. You see, continuous failure motivates the individual either to set his goals so low that success is guaranteed, so uh, high or so high that his inability to achieve them doesn't produce a feeling of failure. So in either case, the person is setting off a assault against self-exposure and is deceiving himself about his abilities in order to protect his ego. Uh, this situation can usually be prevented if parents and the teachers are careful to give general tasks that allow them a distinct possibility of success. Such tasks should be challenging without pushing them beyond their capabilities. An approach of this kind helps them establish a realistic level of aspiration that will carry over adulthood. Other studies have shown that group standards have a significant effect on individual level of aspiration. In one experiment, several groups of college students work on simple arithmetic problems, and the time it took each group to finish a page was, publicly announced, and directly afterward, each student privately recorded the score he expected to make on the next stage. That is his level of aspiration. So it was found that these private levels were influenced by the group's performance. Students who score above the group average tended to lower their estimates, and those who score below average expected to do better. So there we are apparently exhibiting a tendency to conform, or at least a safety in numbers psychology. Another important fact is that we carefully select the groups with which we compare ourselves. A good golfer chooses people who shoot in the 70s or 80s as his reference groups. A duffer compares himself with people who shoot well over 100. To test this idea, college students were given intelligence test problems and were later told whether their scores were above or below those of high school, college, or graduate students. So each subject was then asked to estimate his score on a subsequent test, and it was found that students who found that their scores were below those of high school students raised their level of aspirations, while those who scored higher than the graduate students lowered their estimates most. So these results are further evidence not only of a tendency to conform to one's own group, but also to be influenced by the factors of pressures. Then what are the uses of levels of aspirations? To begin with, it increases his self-confidence. It helps in setting one's goal realistically. Success estimates one to strive for further success. Avoids failure. Helps to know how much one has to try and work hard to reach his goal. Here, I'm coming with some little information regarding the difference between positive and negative aspirations. So people may aspire to achieve success, which is a positive aspiration. We have a negative aspiration like wanting to avoid failure. I have realistic aspirations which are within their reach, or unrealistic aspirations which they cannot achieve. So there is a significant psychological implications of the level of aspirations. The level at which a person set his significant goals, the level of performance to which he aspires, an individual's aspirational level has an important bearing on his personality and adjustment. Now, let me touch upon the attitude, the third important aspect of this lesson. So, in social psychology, attitudes are defined as learned global evaluations of a person, object, place, or issue that influence thought and action. So, put more simply, attitudes are basic expressions of approval or disapproval, favorability or unfavorability, likes, dislikes, etc. Attitudes are defined as a mental predisposition to act that is expressed by evaluating say articular entity with some degree of favor or disfavor. An attitude is a hypothetical construct that represents an individual's degree of like or dislike for something. Attitudes are generally positive or negative views of a person, place, thing, or event that is often referred to as the attitude object. Individuals generally have attitudes that focus on objects, people, or institutions, something. Frankly speaking, attitude has three basic components, and affective component is the first one, and this involves a person's feelings, emotions about the attitude object. So it is after all the feelings or emotions that something evolves, and a good example is I'm scared of spiders. uh, Another component of attitude is termed as behavioral component. It is, after all, the way the attitude we have influence how we act or behave towards the object. It is a tendency or disposition to act in certain ways towards something. So, best example in relation to the above one is I will avoid spiders and scream if I see one. Third component is literally known as cognitive component. So this involves a person's belief and knowledge about an object. It is our thoughts, beliefs, and ideas about something. And the best example in relation to the above two component is I believe spiders are dangerous. So these are not always highly related to each other. So the specific characteristics of attitude are three in numbers. Let me tell you one by one. First, they tend to persist unless something is done to change them. They can fall anywhere along a continuum from very favorable to very unfavorable situation. And the third, they are directed towards some object about which a person has feelings and beliefs. Well, dear friends, how attitude are formed? How do you develop your attitude? Yes, essentially, attitudes are the outward manifestation of your inner values and beliefs. These develop over time. As you grow, you watch the significant people around you behaving in a particular way. You are being told to cherish certain things over others, and you learn from your teachers and peers and come to value certain things over others, thus forming your value system. So these in turn give rise to development of your attitude. Here, persuasion is the process of changing attitudes, and the social psychologists have discovered two primary information processing routes to persuasion. Number one is central root processing, which is recipient carefully considers the issues involved in persuasion, and the second route is peripheral route processing, which is more likely used by uninvolved inattentive targets and normally less enduring. uh, So social learning is, after all, acquires attitude from others, and these are done through classical conditioning, subliminal conditioning, instrumental conditioning, and observational learning. How attitude change? Attitude can be changed through persuasion, right? Persuasion is an active method of influence that attempts to guide people towards the adoption of an attitude, idea, or behavior by rational or emotional means. Numerous variables have been found to influence the persuasion process, and these are normally presented in four major categories, but I am not coming to that. But in all the times, every individual face some issues in attitude formation. The question is how attitudes are learned. Yes, the answer is through condition and experience, knowledge and beliefs. The source of information on attitude formation include personal experience, influence of family, direct marketing in the mass media, and these are no, and the side by side there is personal factors. And there is again psychological factors influencing attitude string, and normally these questions arises: does it directly affect one's own outcomes and the self-interest? Is it related to deeply held philosophical, political, and religious values? Is it of concern to one's close friends, family, and social in groups? Yes. So how can psychological principles help you learn and remember? Yes, the answer is uh, the testing effect shows that learning and memory are enhanced by actively retrieving rather than simply rereading previously studied materials. Scientific psychology began in Germany in 1879 when Wilhelm Wundt opened the first psychology laboratory. So, as I am coming to the concluding part of the lesson, I just want to tell you the most yeah, important, psychological principles that may help the students learn more effectively. So, let me spell out one by one. The first psychological principles that help the students learn more effectively is grow mindset. So students' beliefs or perceptions about intelligence and the ability affect their cognitive functioning and learning. Second, priority knowledge. So what students already know affects their learning. Third, limits of stage theories. Students' cognitive development and learning are not limited by general stages of development. Fourth, facilitating context. Learning is based on context. So, generalizing learning to new contexts is not spontaneous but rather needs to be facilitated. Fifth, practice. Acquiring long-term knowledge and skill is largely dependent on practice. Feedback. Clear explanatory and timely feedback to students is important for learning. Seven, self-regulation. Students' self-regulation assists in learning and self-regulatory skills can be taught. 8. Creativity. Students' creativity can be fostered. 9. Intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation tend to enjoy learning and to do better when they are more intrinsically rather than extrinsically motivated to achieve. 10th, mastery goals. Students persist in the face of challenging tasks and process information more deeply when they adopt mastery goals rather than performance goals. 11th is teacher expectation. Teachers' expectations about their students affect students' opportunities to learn, their motivation, and their learning outcomes. 12th one is goal setting. Setting goals that are short-term, which is proximal or specific and moderately challenging, enhances motivation more than establishing goals that are long-term, which is distal, generally and overly challenging. 13 is social context. Learning is situated within multiple social contexts. 14. Interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal relationships and communication are critical to both the teaching learning process and the social developments of students. 15th principle is well-being. Emotional well-being influences educational performance, learning, and development. 16 is classroom conduct. Expectations for classroom conduct and the social interaction are learned and can be taught using proven principles of behavior and effective classroom instruction. 17 is expectations and support. Let me tell you, effective classroom management is based on setting and communicating high expectations, consistently nurturing positive relationships, and providing a high level of student support. 18 is formative and summative assessment. Formative and summative assessments are both important and useful, but they require different approaches and interpretations. Last but not the one psychological principle that help students learn more effectively is nothing but assessment development. Student skill, knowledge, and ability are best measured with assessment processes grounded in psychological science with well-defined standards for quality and fairness. And finally, assessment evaluation. Making sense of assessment data depends on clear, appropriate, and fair interpretation. Now, let me come to the conclusion of this lesson. So let me put over you two specific questions. First one is, how does the knowledge of psychology help in making learning efficient? Yes, answer is psychology helps the teacher to get answers to these questions. It tells us that learning becomes more effective if factors like motivation and interest are taken into consideration by every teacher. So knowledge of psychology can help the teacher in modifying his or her approach to the teaching learning process. And second one is the role of psychology in learning. I'm telling you, uh, 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 because of the role of psychology play in learning, psychologists working in the field of education are focused on identifying and studying learning methods to better understand how people absorb and retain new information. Educational psychologists apply theories of human development to understand individual learning and inform the instructional processes. So, with this, let me say thank you very much.